That was amazing. I don't say that often, but holy fucking shit. That was an amazing episode. You know you have some of the most talented and consistent writers in the world when you pull off something like what this episode did, considering the show has been going on for over 5 years now. I haven't felt like this about a show since Breaking Bad was coming to a close a few years ago, and it is such a wonderful feeling of unpredictability that drives me to watch this show until it finishes. As soon as this episode finished, I wondered, how on earth can they top that? And now, we're halfway through the season, I have such high hopes for the rest of the series now. But today, we won't be talking about the rest of the series. We will be talking about The Door. Take it away, Mrs. Nesbit.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Episode 5 in Game of Thrones has never really been renowned for producing anything truly heartbreaking or stomach-clenching, maybe perhaps Series 1, but considering the final sequence at the end of last week's episode, I presumed this episode would be very filler-oriented. Yes, the episode itself is not without filler, but it uses it to its advantage. Firstly, I am very happy we didn't see another scene in King's Landing of people passing Tommen back and forth, whilst bickering that something's got to be done about the High Sparrow. Secondly, of course, the ending of the episode needed some kind of build-up, and the best way for the showrunners to do this is probably to pass off some of the weaker parts of the story so that the information can be delivered and not be too exciting so that the end of the episode is ruined. A good example of this can be seen back in Series 4 in the episode The Mountain and the Viper, where there was an awful lot of interesting stuff but nothing truly made you gasp right up until the last 10 minutes, where Oberyn gets his head smashed in. This formula works well as it will make the one moment of the episode overshadow all of the other parts of it, which is what happened in this episode and took me quite by surprise. The first scene with Baelish creates a similar effect to that of Melisandre's appearance last week in that he just looks very insignificant standing alone against Brienne and Sansa. Due to Sansa no longer being part of his big plan and roaming wild, he's panicking and would happily take his own life just for her. It does seem a little too suspicious for Littlefinger to be playing the "sorry I made a mistake" card at this point in the game though. Maybe he's got other plans up his sleeve. Well, we know he's got other plans up his sleeve, it's just not becoming very apparent quite yet. Finally, if I couldn't get enough hype trains flying off into space about the return of the phrase "now the Tullys are back too," I'm not entirely certain that this is for the best in that the show seems to be shoehorning in all these characters from previous series, which isn't all that much of an issue if they worked well into the story. I just hope that these names and characters don't get thrown aside in favour of the more popular characters. The same thing happened in Series 5 with the missing segments in Pike. Those events are being shown in Series 6 now, yeah sure, but they could have put them in Series 5 or at least started that plotline so that we wouldn't need to shove the memorable character Theon in there just for the sake of having a memorable character in that specific plotline. Back in Braavos, it seems that despite learning how to fight without sight, Arya's even worse now that she can see again. It's quite Star Wars in that way.
Your eyes can deceive you, don't trust them.
But you'd think Arya would have learned that lesson from being blind, and now we're somewhat back to square one again. The theatre show segment was fantastic. This could lead into Cersei's plotline about mocking her and the crown, but her power may not reside so well across the narrow sea. This becomes apparent as we see Arya's facial expressions change over the course of the play, in that none of the characters depicted are given any form of respect or dignity in their representations. I think that this being Arya's assignment works well in making sure that she becomes unsympathetic towards those she was loyal to before she became no one. The play itself is absolutely hilarious as it not only parodies the politics of Westeros very well, but also Shakespearean verse and rhyme, which as we all know should not be taken entirely seriously. We then have some bizarre event where a cock is put right in front of a camera, probably for the sake of equality and all that shit. Why is everyone going nuts about this? That was actually unintentional. In all seriousness, I didn't see why people are going so crazy about this, considering there have been so many penises in the show before this episode. The Myronese champion pissing, Theon's cock was also seen in Series 1, and for God's sake, Hodor got his cock out then too.
Not to worry. I'm not overgain on blocks anyway.
I was a tad annoyed they ripped this quote straight from Stanislavski,
There are no small parts.
but has made me interested to give the Mercy chapter from The Winds of Winter a read at some point to see what differences there are. The following segment with Bran was fantastic, giving us some insight into how the White Walkers were created. This adds an interesting dynamic to the story now, possibly some hints towards nature fighting back against mankind. This makes me wonder whether the children of the forest are truly allied to the humans or not. I'm going to be brutally honest here and say I am very happy with the Kingsmoot section, even more so than when I read it in the book. Granted, the story in the TV show is a lot more simplified and the lack of Victarion makes me slightly sad, but this segment was a really great watch. The anxiety that Theon shows can really be felt by the panning shots of all the characters and the chilling music. Every time I see him do anything, I wonder if he's just going to break down and transform back into Reek. He even sounds weaker compared to what he was like in the earlier seasons when he addresses the crowd. Euron, the party pooper, then comes along with this most out of place accent and wins the Kingsmoot. I really liked how that large portion of the Ironborn fucked off without him, almost reflecting the need to abandon selfish traditions of royalty and elitism and actually take some action. Yara knows this, and so do all those that are faithful to her. Euron and his mates were so busy celebrating putting twigs and shit on their heads that they didn't even notice that their fleets had been stolen to find the Dragon Queen. Speaking of, Daenerys sends Jorah away to find a cure, and I am praying for one thing and one thing only, that this is the last we see of him before his death. Seeking a cure for an illness that has never been cured. Oh, that sounds so boring. Please leave this guy for a bit and focus on more important stuff now you've sent him away. Back in her city, however, I'm happy that the Red Priestesses are finally being brought into the fray now. They've been hinting at them being a part of the whole Marine thing for a while now, and they're being slowly paced into the story. Now shit gets even more interesting when we consider Daenerys to be the true Azor Ahai. My hopes of Jon and Daenerys meeting on civil terms are now being eroded away, considering the influence of the Red religion has spread so vastly. I think Varys sensed this conflict from a mile away, which is why he made his position on the matter very clear. Far to the north again, Bran decides to hack into the network and finds the White Walkers are gonna be coming soon. I'm so happy they're now appearing in the narrative. I think these guys are a terrific part of the show, and especially with all the new information about who they're allegiant to that we found out in this very episode. There's this truly fantastic shot of these trees slowly fading into focus, but also fading in as the skeleton White Walker horde, truly demonstrating the power of nature as it hides in plain sight. And fuck me, it was intense. I knew he was in a dream, but I knew this wouldn't be in Bran's favour considering he shouldn't be seeing this without the three-eyed raven. This sequence is stretched out for such an uncomfortable length of time as well, it's fantastic. Just as plans get put in motion for where our characters at the wall are going to find some friends, we have more hilarious comments and reactions from Tormund and Brienne.
And that wildling fellow with the beard.
So back at the tree until the very end of the episode. What an absolutely brilliant ending. When Mira runs out of the tree to see the hordes of White Walkers waiting to slaughter them all, there's this fantastic shot of the lot of them, much like when Jon first sees the haunted forest on fire in series 4. And holy fucking shit, the Night King's ice cleaver looks fucking awesome! The tensions rise as the characters desperately clamber around for their lives. I'm very much unsure of the Children of the Forest's position on the White Walkers now though, after seeing the clip of the Ice King being born earlier, considering they're trying their utmost to kill them. It's also very interesting that the top tier elite of the White Walkers are immune to, or at least have power over, fire. Presumably this explains the poor accuracy of the Children of the Forest, in that throwing their thermal detonators at the more powerful Whites would be a waste. The episode's tension doesn't make us immediately aware of Hodor especially, but it certainly has this element of panic surrounding him. Watching this for the second time, it becomes apparent that Hodor was not under Bran's control in the present, but Bran in his dream was warging into a young Hodor so that he could get the message in the future. Now I hope that this is the only time travelling reference we have here, because I think that kind of thing should be left to science fiction. I don't have a problem with how Hodor was used before his rather emotional death. I think that it serves the plot well and demonstrates the show show's absolute genius writing. I just hope that time traveling into the past doesn't change anything too substantial, and that it doesn't become too important to the rest of the story. It was rather sad to see Summer go, as this leaves only 3 potential direwolves to be left alive as well. Nymeria could potentially be alive, Ghost is obviously alive, and it's uncertain about Shaggy Dog yet either. Now, if anybody else hated how Voldemort died in the final Harry, they'll be very much aware of this evaporating effect that was used when the Raven died. Fortunately, in Game of Thrones, it looks very dramatic, working to the dream state sequence's advantage and really emphasizing how important this character was before somebody fucked it all up. I wondered why the girl couldn't just throw the grenade into the horde and save her own life, but then I considered how much more zombies she could kill if they were all trying to get at her at once. RIP. As soon as the dramatic music ends and the tragic somber violins come in, God, I was welling up at this point. I'm not even joking. This is probably the first time I've felt this way when watching this show, and credit where credit's due, this episode deserves the praise it received. The mashing of past and present creates this beautifully sad sequence of Hodor performing and receiving his only command at the same time, and is going to be one of those moments in the show that will break the internet and be remembered for being so brilliant for years to come. So, did it suck? I've already said it, but this is a really fucking good episode. This is probably my favourite episode of Series 6 so far, without a doubt. I'm sure this opinion will probably be recycled over and over again before long, but this is TV at its finest. I really can't wait to find out what happens next week. Thanks for watching, my dears. I'm finally up to date. This is great. I'll see you all next week. Oh yeah, and now I'm up to date, I can work on Goblet of Fire alongside these videos. Here are those pesky outtakes. Oh, goody goody gumdrops. I presumed this episode would be filled with very filly bleh. I'm not entirely certain that this is for the best, in that the show seems to be who-shawning. Oh my god, I really can't say this name. Name, line, I can't even anything anymore. Even more so than I'm gonna be right. And they're being. What on earth have I written here?